The idea of trading George Pickens may sound surprising on the surface, yet it reflects a familiar Cowboys pattern. Dallas is constantly balancing talent retention against long-term flexibility, especially at premium offensive positions. Pickens represents both value and uncertainty, which is exactly why his name is circulating. Rather than letting the situation drift toward a contract standoff, the Cowboys appear to be exploring all outcomes. This is less about dissatisfaction and more about control. When Dallas evaluates options early, it is usually because something deeper is being weighed. Pickens is one of the most talented wide receivers on the market. That reality alone makes him one of the most powerful assets the Cowboys currently possess. Instead of losing leverage in open free agency, Dallas could use the franchise tag as a strategic bridge. That move would allow Pickens to negotiate with other teams under controlled conditions. If a deal is reached, Dallas could then execute a trade from a position of strength. This approach maximizes return while minimizing risk. It is a calculated move, not a reactionary one. The concept itself is not unusual in the modern NFL. Franchise tags have increasingly become transactional tools rather than retention guarantees. Teams now use them to preserve asset value while surveying the market. For Dallas, the logic is straightforward. If Pickens commands elite receiver money elsewhere, Dallas must decide whether that fits its financial roadmap. Exploring a trade before committing long-term is simply prudent management. Ignoring that option would be organizational malpractice. What makes this situation especially notable is timing. The Cowboys are not under immediate pressure to act. Pickens remains productive, young, and valuable. But the league is already shaping its offseason market. Waiting too long could mean fewer options and less leverage. Dallas is signaling that it prefers to dictate terms. That mindset explains why this conversation exists at all. How the Cowboys could structure a Pickens trade. The mechanism behind a potential Pickens trade is where the strategy becomes clear. By applying the franchise tag, Dallas would prevent Pickens from reaching unrestricted free agency. That alone preserves negotiation power. Once tagged, Pickens could explore contract frameworks with interested teams. If mutual terms are found, Dallas could finalize a trade package. This creates a win-win scenario on paper. The player secures long-term money, and the team secures compensation. According to analysis from Cowboys Wire, Pickens' trade value sits around a mid-first-round equivalent. Specifically, projections place his worth near the 20th overall pick. That valuation reflects both production and positional importance. Wide receivers capable of changing games do not come cheaply, especially for teams that believe they are one piece away. Dallas understands that urgency drives bidding, and urgency increases returns. The most logical trade partners are teams with cap flexibility and competitive aspirations. These are franchises that feel close to contention but lack a true difference-maker at receiver. For them, a player like Pickens is not a luxury, but a missing link. Dallas is fully aware of how that psychology works. Targeting those teams increases leverage dramatically. It also reduces the risk of settling for a lesser package. This is market engineering, not speculation. What matters most is that Dallas would not be trading from desperation. Pickens is not forcing his way out. There is no public standoff or locker room friction driving urgency. That stability gives the Cowboys control over pacing. They can wait for the right offer instead of reacting to pressure. In trade negotiations, patience often equals profit. Dallas appears committed to that principle here. One of the most intriguing variables in this scenario is the Pittsburgh Steelers connection. Pickens originally arrived in Dallas via a trade after being labeled an attitude concern in Pittsburgh. At the time, the decision was tied closely to organizational leadership. Specifically, it reflected the judgment of then-head coach Mike Tomlin. That context shaped how Pickens was perceived league-wide. But circumstances in Pittsburgh have changed, and those changes alter how teams reassess the narrative. Tomlin is no longer with the Steelers. That alone weakens the original rationale behind Pickens' exit. When leadership changes, player evaluations are often revisited. Labels that once felt permanent can quickly dissolve. For Dallas, this means Pickens' market perception may be cleaner than expected. Teams may now view him through production, not reputation. That shift enhances trade value. The Steelers being described as a wild card underscores how fluid NFL evaluations are. What once felt definitive rarely remains so for long. Pickens' success in Dallas has already softened earlier concerns. Consistency, availability, and output matter more than past narratives. Front offices know this. They are far more willing to bet on talent than to cling to old reports. Dallas benefits from that recalibration. This also reinforces why the Cowboys are comfortable exploring a deal. They are not selling low or managing a crisis. They are leveraging a rehabilitated asset at peak value. That is exactly when smart franchises explore options. If Pickens remains, Dallas retains a weapon. If he moves, Dallas likely gains premium capital. Either outcome supports long-term competitiveness. What this means for Dallas moving forward. The broader implication of this rumor is philosophical rather than transactional. Dallas is signaling a willingness to prioritize flexibility over emotional attachment. That has not always been the franchise's reputation. But recent roster decisions suggest a shift toward pragmatism. Pickens embodies that crossroads perfectly. Elite talent, rising cost, uncertain long-term fit. Those variables demand evaluation, not avoidance. Trading Pickens would not mean retreat. It would mean redistribution of resources. Draft capital creates optionality across multiple positions. It allows Dallas to address depth, defense, or future contracts. The Cowboys are constantly managing a narrow financial window. One large receiver contract could compress that window further. This is the reality driving internal debate. Of course, no move exists without risk. Pickens is capable of taking over games. Replacing that impact is never guaranteed. Dallas must weigh certainty against potential. That balance defines good front offices. Avoiding hard choices usually leads to stagnation. Dallas appears determined not to fall into that trap. Ultimately, whether a trade happens or not is secondary. The real story is that Dallas is actively shaping outcomes instead of reacting to them. That alone reflects organizational maturity. Pickens may stay, tagged and extended. He may move, fueling a broader roster strategy. Either way, this rumor reveals intention. And intention often precedes decisive action in Dallas.